This morning, we're talking about gratitude. Gratitude. Now, I want to ask a sensitive question. All of my drivers who are in the room, anyone ever got a ticket? I was just going to ask. Anybody want to share? Anybody got more than 5 tickets? All right. Well, this one is for you, Brother Romeo. I want you to imagine that you're driving down the best avenue to drive down, Liberty Avenue. Listen, I grew up on Liberty Avenue. I know the frustration of driving down Liberty Avenue. But imagine you're driving down Liberty Avenue, right? And, your foot was feeling a little heavy today, right? You hit 30. You hit 40. And then you multiply it to 60. And guess what? What do you hear next? That's right. And so you get pulled over. Now, you understand you're doing twice the speed limit. So what does that mean? You're not getting a ticket. You're going to see the judge. Right? Am I wrong, Brother Romeo? All right. Brother Romeo's my witness, all right? So, guess what? This is your ticket number 10. Does anybody know what happens when you reach that level? Oh, you're getting your license suspended for sure. And the state of New York specifically doesn't look too well on that. And they start issuing fines and points, right? It's like a game. The fines and points keep going up. But the thing is, you end up paying. Now, imagine you're standing before this judge. What do you think this judge is going to do? You were doing 60 on Liberty Avenue. If I was this judge, I would literally throw the book at you. I mean, I would pick up the book and I would throw it at you. What are you thinking driving that fast on Liberty Avenue? I'm glad you didn't. But don't you think that you would deserve whatever punishment that judge was willing to give you? If he said, I'm taking away your license, wouldn't you deserve it? If he said that I'm not allowing you to drive for 1 whole year, wouldn't you deserve that? If he said that I am fining you $5,000, wouldn't you deserve that? Some of you shaking your head. That's hard. It's hard. But it's hard when you break the law. There's a punishment for your crime. If the punishment was easy, then nobody would respect the law. So imagine now, you stand before this judge, and this judge is imposing all of this on you. How are you going to get to work tomorrow? How are you going to pay the fine if you can't get to work tomorrow? What do you do? But then imagine if this judge said, okay, you are guilty as charged, but I will not impose the punishment on you. Imagine if the judge were to say that to you. There's a term that we use to describe that. And it's saying, it's called mercy. Imagine if you were to stand before this judge and this judge were to show you mercy. But guess what? He's not done. The judge says, I will not impose this punishment on you. But then he stands up He stands up. He gets off of the bench. He takes off his robe and comes to where you are and says, I will pay the punishment for your crime. That, my friends, is called grace. I don't know about you, if you've ever experienced the mercy and the grace of God. I don't know if you've ever been in a place where everything was stacked against you, that you deserve the punishment for your crime, that you deserve the full weight of punishment for your sin. And then God says, no, I will take the punishment for your sin. This is the kind of God that we serve. The kind of God that says, mercy is not enough for my people, that I will take the punishment for their sin. That I, although they don't deserve it, I will give them mercy and grace. You see, mercy and grace are not just abstract ideas. These two concepts are the heart of the gospel. They are the focal point of what Jesus does for his people. Mercy is kind, it's sympathetic, it's forgiving the treatment of others. It relieves distress, and guess what? It cancels debt. Sometimes you wish Visa would have some mercy on you. Cancel the debt. But God says that in his love and compassion that he will cancel our debt. Grace is the unearned, unmerited favor of God that rescues us because of his nature, not ours. Grace says that you do not deserve the goodness of God, but God's nature says, I give it to you anyway because I love you. This is the goodness of God. This is the grace of God. This is who God is. The God of mercy, the God of grace. And there's a story of a woman in Luke chapter 7. In Luke chapter 7, we see mercy and we see grace collide in the life of a sinful woman. Luke chapter 7, verse 36, it says that one of the Pharisees asked him to eat with him. And he went into the Pharisee's house and reclined at the table. And behold, a woman of the city, I want you to see this part. And behold, a woman of the city who was when she learned that he was reclining at table in the Pharisee's house, brought an alabaster flask of ointment, and standing behind him at his feet, weeping, she began to wet his feet with her tears, and wiped them with the hair of her head, and kissed his feet, and anointed them with the ointment. Now, when the Pharisee who had invited him saw this, he said to himself, if this man were a prophet, he would have known who and what sort of woman this is who is touching him, for she is a sinner. So, I want to take you on a journey this morning. I want you to use your imagination And I want you to imagine that we are all standing in this man, Simon the Pharisee, in his living room. And we are watching this story unfold before us. You see, Simon and the Pharisee invites Jesus to have a meal at his house. We do not know why. But Jesus accepts this invitation. And so I want you to imagine Jesus, now when they would sit and eat, it said that during the custom of this time, that they would recline. Right? They would recline on their side, holding themselves up with their left hand, using their right hand to eat. So Jesus would be reclining while in this house, while sharing this meal. And so this woman comes into this room. Now, you may think, why is a strange woman just walking into his house? It was a custom at that time as well that when someone of such significance was being hosted at a dinner party, that those in the village and the town would be able to just come in and see and listen. So she probably was not the only visitor that was just standing in the room watching Jesus and Simon and whoever else was invited at this dinner table as they reclined and they ate and they talked and they discussed. But as Jesus is reclining there, the scripture says that behold, a woman of the city who was a... Let me ask you a question. If I were to describe any one of you, would that be the word you would like me to describe you as? Would you like your identity around the church or the community that you live in to be that of a sinner? Can you imagine for a moment just how bad this woman had to be to have this branded as her identity? Think about that. Think about that. Listen, humanity can be very judgmental. We all have it within us. So I want you to think for your own self what somebody would have to do for you to look at them that way. And now picture her standing here. Okay? And now you have Jesus. And so Jesus reclines, partaking in this meal, and who comes in? The sinful woman comes in. But what does she do? Everyone else in the background. But she goes straight for the feet of Jesus. She goes straight for the feet of Jesus. And what does the Bible say? It says that she took an alabaster flask of ointment. Now, understand what that means. That flask, that ointment, would have cost her 1 year. 1 year's worth of wages. 1 year. By our standard today, that could be anywhere from $50,000 to $150,000. Think about that. And so she began to anoint his feet. And if that wasn't enough, her tears began to wash his feet. I want you to imagine this for a second. Imagine this. How much would she have to cry for her tears to wash his feet? Come on, we've all cried in this room. How much would you have to cry for it to be noticeable that your tears, the amount of water coming out of your eyes would be enough to wash someone's feet? And so then, what does she do? The only thing she has left, her very hair, and she dried his feet. Now, I tried to get 2 of our young people to come this morning and act this out. And I could not find any girl willing to touch Liam's feet. His own sister refused to touch his feet. I didn't even ask them to take their hair and come closer. I just asked them, I was going to give you a towel and you can no, they didn't want to touch his feet. But how many of you would have been willing to say, I would take my very hair and wipe his feet? You see, what happens here doesn't happen in our culture today, but what she did here for their time was significant. What she did there was significant in their culture and their time. You see, Simon, you can see his heart towards this. But I don't know if you picked up on this. He says that in verse 39, the Pharisee who would invite him saw this. He said to himself, do you all know what that means? He was thinking to himself. He was thinking to himself. He was thinking to himself, if this man only knew what kind of woman she was. I don't know about you. I don't know if you've ever been through that kind of judgment. If you've been through that kind of shame where people have just looked at you and said, look at her, look at him. Who do they think they are? Who do they think they are? They have no right to be here at the feet of Jesus. This is what Simon was saying. And guess what? Simon was a religious leader. Simon would be one of those that you would look up to and say, man, he is close to God. You see, gratitude is the fruit of forgiveness. I don't know if you understood what just transpired. You see, when she came into that room, she was not looking for forgiveness. She was already forgiven by Jesus. She came into that room to express her gratitude. Because guess what? The Bible said, who was she? She knew she was a sinner. Not only did she know she was a sinner, everybody else in that city, in that town, knew that she was a sinner. And there was no way that she could escape that shame. There was no way that she could escape that identity that was put on her life. I don't know if anybody knows what I'm talking about. There's sometimes in life people put some things on you and it feels like they've put you in prison because you just can't escape who they claim that you are. But this woman, she came in. See, she didn't come in to earn grace because she had already received it, but she came to say that because of the grace that you have given me, that I must come to show you my love. Because of the mercy that you have shown me, I must come and I must show you my love. See, it says that forgiveness is the soil, but gratitude is the fruit that grows out of that soil of forgiveness. I know that we talk about forgiveness a lot, but forgiveness is such a critical point in our lives that we must come to understand. Unforgiveness robs us of so much. Unforgiveness labeled this woman as a sinner across this entire city, and she would not receive mercy from no one but Jesus. But Jesus. And you will think that Simon would know this. You would think that Simon would be one that would say, let her go. But look at what happens. And Jesus answering to him. Jesus is now talking to Simon. Understand what just happened now. Understand what just happened. Simon was thinking, who is this woman? And guess what? Jesus is answering his very thought. Look at the power of who God is. Look at the power of who God is. Simon, I have something to say to you. And he answered, say it, teacher. A certain moneylender had two debtors. One owed 500 denarii and the other 50. When they could not pay, he canceled the debt of both. Now, which of them would love him more? Simon answered, the one, I suppose, to whom he canceled the larger debt. And he said to him, you have judged rightly. Then turning toward the woman, he said to Simon, do you see this woman? I entered your house. You gave me no water for my feet, but she has wet my feet with her tears and wiped them with her hair. You gave me no kiss from the time I came in. She has not ceased to kiss my feet. You did not anoint my head with oil, but she has anointed my feet with ointment. Therefore, I tell you, her sin, which are many, are forgiven. For she loved much, but he who is forgiven little, what? Loves little. Think about that rebuke that he gives Simon. And what he says to this woman. The story that he tells provides a great contrast between two people. You have one who's forgiven for 500 and one who's forgiven for 50. Who was Jesus talking about? He's talking about this woman, and he's talking about Simon. You see, the problem that Simon has is that he is full of self-righteousness. Simon watches on as in disgust as this is happening right in front of him, because he thinks that this man who professes to be the Son of God, this man who professes to be a teacher, is allowing a sinful woman to touch him. You see, it wasn't the problem that she was in the room. The problem they had that was that she was touching Jesus. You know that there will be times in life where people don't care that you're in the room, but the moment that you step out and you start to do something and you start to exalt God and you start to magnify God and you start to worship God and you start to see things change in your life, people have a problem. And so Simon's problem was not her coming in the room, because I'm sure that there were others there, but Simon's problem was that she was touching the feet of this man, because Simon would never allow someone like that to touch him. And there are times in life that we can be just as judgmental and as harsh as that. But look what Jesus says to him. When Jesus says, you know, you did not give me water to wash my feet. You know, they lived in the Middle East. What did they walk through? Sand. Would you allow me with sandy feet to walk in your house? You got to wash your feet. And so the custom of that time is, if you're throwing imagine you're throwing a dinner party. You're throwing a dinner party and you're bringing a revered guest of honor. And he walks into your house, tracking in the dirt and the mud. And you didn't even wash his feet. That's what he's saying to Simon. You did not have the courtesy to even wash my feet. And then what else did he say? He says, but she has done this. You gave me no kiss. You know that it's custom for them to greet each other with a kiss. That is their culture. That is their culture. You did not anoint my head with oil. You see, Simon did not invite Jesus there to learn from him, because his heart was already decided as who Jesus was. He wasn't there to gain anything from Jesus because of his own self-righteousness. Because he knew best. He knew that his own morality, and he was blind to his own sin. Simon was blind to his own sin. He could not see past. That's why when he looked at this woman, he looked at her with such disdain, because realistically, he was blind to who he was. You know, the Bible says that before you look at your brother, you should look at the own log in your own eye before. This is what's happening. And so, Simon never recognized his own need for mercy. He cannot see the transformation that is taking place right in front of him because of his own pride. He cannot see what this woman is doing. This woman is doing the very things that he, as the host, should have done. And so, gratitude exposes our pride. And guess what? Gratitude leads to worship. This woman says nothing, not a word, but her actions proclaim the gospel, because mercy noticed her, grace restores her, and gratitude transformed her. That woman walked into that house a sinner, but she left that house transformed with the grace of God. She walked in unrighteous, but she left with the mercy of Jesus Christ. You know, I pray that all of us today, maybe we're walking around still with guilt. We're walking around with some shame. We're walking around with some things in our life that don't belong. But I pray that as you leave this house today, that you leave here transformed. What happened there was that a dinner party turned into a worship service. That dinner party that Simon was just trying to trip Jesus up or trying to catch him in something that they could possibly use against him turned into a moment of transformation. See, her act was more than emotion. Her act was love. And worship is simply love that is made visible. Let me say that again. Worship is love that is made visible. Yes, we spend time in worship and we can sing the songs, we can sing the hymns, we can sing whatever you want to sing. But worship is love made visible. If we were to look at our lives today, do we see a life of worship? Because that's what happened here with this woman. She made her love visible. She made her love visible. And worship is about perception. When we worship, we perceive something to have value. And when I come before God, and the way I look at God determines how much I worship Him. She perceived that when she got to the feet of Jesus, that nothing else mattered. Let me explain something else. In their custom, a woman would not show her hair. We still see that today in certain cultures in the Middle East, that they cover their head. A woman was not to show her hair because that was intimate. That was for her husband only. And so for this woman to come in this room, in this man's house, to stand before Jesus and to expose her hair, and not only to expose her hair, but take it and wipe his feet, was the ultimate shame in their society. But this woman came in and says, I don't care about what the world has to say, because the world doesn't know what this man did in my heart, and that they don't know that I went through shame and I went through all of this, and I come here and I've been transformed by the goodness and the mercy and the grace of Jesus Christ. So you know what? I'm going to express my gratitude, and if they don't like it, I don't care if they don't like it. And there's some of you today that need to get that attitude, not an I don't care attitude, but an attitude that says, you know what? I want my God to see my love for Him, and I don't care what they have to say, because my God has been good to me. My God has saved me. My God has healed me. My God has done great and mighty miracles in my life. I would not be here today if it were not for the grace of my God. Come on. Is there anyone that can testify of that this morning? And so, Jesus says to her, your sins are forgiven. Do you understand what just happened? Do you understand that the sinner woman walked into the room? The sinner woman stood before Jesus at His feet and left no longer a sinner. Do you understand? Her identity was wrapped in the fact that she was a sinner. And now was transformed by the grace of Jesus. Understand that when you come to Jesus, you are no longer the same. You are a new creation. You are born again. The old has become new. What man has said over your life is broken because you have a purpose and a destiny that God has called for you. And when you walk into that room and you sit at the feet of Jesus, understand something changes. I heard a quote that I listened to this morning, and it says this: if the highest place I ever reach is at your feet, then I've done it all. If the highest place that I ever reach in my lifetime is to be at the feet of Jesus, then I've done it all. Come on, somebody didn't hear that this morning. You see, you got to understand something, that at Jesus' feet, the ground is level. There's no rank. There's no this one is better than this one. There's no one better. There's no Pharisee. There's no sinner. There is just those who worship, those who are grateful, and those who are ready to express their love for a God that changes life. And so Jesus says, then those who were at the table began to say among themselves, who is this who even forgives sin? And he said to this woman, your faith has saved you. Go in peace. This concept of peace, we think of it as two nations at war, two people in fighting against each other, but that's not what Jesus was saying. Jesus was saying, walk in reconciliation. Walk now in redemption. That's why he tells the woman who was caught in the act of adultery, go and sin no more, because you are no longer a sinner. You have met my grace. You have met my love. You have met my mercy. And now you are not the same as you came into this room. So go and live in your redemption and live in now in your relationship with God, because now you have earned the right to become a child of God. And so gratitude brings peace. This is not just any kind of thing. Peace is walking in reconciliation and walking in redemption and walking with your God. And so we come back to our story. That judge that stood before us in that courtroom is none other than Jesus Christ, because he stands here today looking at us, seeing all that we have gone through, knowing our inner thoughts as the way he did knowing Simon, knowing all of the sins that we have done, knowing the crime that we are guilty of, and he stands before us. And yes, he says, you know what, you are guilty, but then he says that my love has covered your sin, my love has covered your shame. And so he gets up off of that throne and he comes down to earth and he takes up the cross and says that I will take that crime. I will take that punishment. I will take your place for you so that you don't have to go through this, that you don't have to die for your sin, but I will die for you. And guess what? He died for you. And then on that third day, the Bible says that he rose again, because you know what? No grave can keep that man down. No grave can keep that perfectness of him down. And he takes the keys of death. So not only have you received his mercy, not only have you received his grace, but now you walk in peace with no fear of condemnation, no fear of the consequence of sin on your life, because the God of heaven and earth has come to save you. And so, mercy cancels the debt. Grace gives peace. Mercy says you don't have to pay. Grace says, I will pay it for you. But gratitude says, I will love you forever for what you have done. I don't know if there's anyone in this house today, and you have experienced the almighty love of God in your life. And like this woman, you walked in the room a sinner, but you left changed because of the goodness of God. Come on, I don't know if there's anyone here that's ready to jump up and say, God, I thank you. I thank you that you didn't leave me in my sin, that you didn't leave me in my sickness, that you didn't leave me in my shame, but you have called me out of the grave. I don't know if there's anyone here that will stand up and throw their hands up in gratitude and say, God, I thank you. God, I love you. God, you deserve my worship. You deserve the honor. You deserve the praise. And so, God, I will pour it out on you, Lord. It doesn't matter if I'm dignified or undignified. It doesn't matter what they say about me, but I know that my God deserves more than I could ever give him because of what he has done in my life. And so today I stand at the feet of Jesus crying out, Abba, Father, would you just take me and love me, oh God? Would you use me? Would you do great and mighty things in my life, God?